Hello, I'm Jim Cornwall, and this is the WalkingPost.com podcast. WalkingPost.com is the news website dedicated to walking, with all the latest on books, gear, health, festivals, events, trails, fitness, and more. This podcast is number 47, and it's going out live on April the 3rd. Hopefully you survived April Fool's Day. When it wasn't overdone, it was quite clever sometimes. Now you can spot them a mile off. Maybe that's the point. People and businesses are so concerned that they're going to be taken literally that they make it so absurd that no one would believe it, which kind of misses the point. Today is the first day of the school Easter break, or at least it is in our part of the world, and a quick check of the weather app confirms it. 2 weeks of rain. But at least the days are getting longer, which is nice to see. Let's get to April the 3rd. It is World Party Day, and that's not the band, although there are plenty of places probably not feeling like a party right about now. It is Walk to Work Day, so for me that means 13 stairs and a kitchen detour. It's Chocolate Mousse Day, Find a Rainbow Day, and Film Score Day. Feel free to send me your favourite film scores. I don't mean literally, just tell me what they are. My favourite in that genre is definitely Peter Gabriel's Passion. It's Good Friday as well, or at least it is this year. And it's Will It Ever Stop Raining in Scotland Day, which I just made up. It's the day in 1888 when Jack the Ripper committed his first murder, or at least the first that we know of, and it's the day the first mobile phone call was made back in 1973, and I bet it was to complain about the phone company trying to get him to upgrade. Speaking of upgrades, it's the day the first iPad came out in 2010, and for birthdays, Marlon Brando, Doris Day, and Jane Goodall. For this week's interview, we're popping across the Irish Sea to Northern Ireland for an interview about the Walking for All project with Gareth Moore, Head of Participation at Outscape, and Gráinne O'Brien, Walking for All Officer for Louth. Before we do get going into that interview, if you do have news, guest ideas or even subjects to cover or comments, or if you want to advertise, please do get in touch via walkingpost.com or just email me at jim@walkingpost.com. Okay, let's get through some of the headlines of the news articles you may have missed that we had on walkingpost.com this past week. RAB has launched the Cyclone XP40 and Aerox backpacks. South Carolina opened its first river park network, and Agoda published its top picks for slow travel destinations in Asia. If you've ever been to Asia and got caught up in the traffic in some of their biggest cities, that is the very definition of slow travel. There's been a greater than 10% rise in visitors to US national parks. A new leaflet has been created to promote car-free days across Harwich Harbour, and the Pine Creek Rail Trail has been named Pennsylvania's 2026 Trail of the Year. Hong Kong's Country Park Hiking and Planting Day 2026 is going to be held later this month. United by Nature is looking to unite Americans around the great outdoors, and you can read all of these and many more at walkingpost.com. And so this week the interview relates to a programme in Northern Ireland and the border counties in the Republic of Ireland, and it's called Walking for All. It's being partly funded by the EU and it is being led by Outscape. Walking for All is meant to help people of all ages and abilities to enjoy short, regular walks in local spaces, as well as to increase physical activity, improve mental well-being, reduce isolation, and deepen people's connection with their local natural environment. So to tell us about it are Gareth Moore, Head of Participation at Outscape, and Gráinne O'Brien, Walking for All Officer for Louth. Maybe we could start by finding out what Walking for All is.
Walking for All is essentially, Jim, the product of over a decade's worth of collaborative work between various bodies in Northern Ireland primarily. So that would be the Public Health Agency here in Northern Ireland, but also the local health trusts. Our health system is split up into a number of different trusts that cover the province. Other stakeholders, the local councils here in Northern Ireland, organisations like Sport Ireland and Sport Northern Ireland, so that would be south and north of the border. And there was a working group established about a decade ago, more or less, looking at walking provision, inspired in many ways by an organisation that's quite local to where you are by the sounds of it. So we were inspired by an organisation called Pass for All, who are now called Walking Scotland. And over the last decade or so, they've been establishing a really strong and comprehensive network of walks across Scotland. And over the course of the time that they've been operating that program, they've managed to really shift the dial in terms of participation in Scotland. I think the kind of population-wide increase in walking is it's about a 10 percentile of the entire population has been engaged to get out and get active and build walking into their weekly routine. So the PHA, ourselves, Outscape, not to forget our involvement, and then those other partners work to examine what would be the most effective way to mirror that work, or take that great example of Walking Scotland and apply it to the Irish context. So Walking for All is essentially the programme that has been devised as the outcome of that sort of decade-long period of work.
For me in County Louth, just south of the border, I am the officer for County Louth, so I've been working at the minute with community groups and helping them set up walking groups and training walk leaders. So there's also officers across all the 6 border counties. So there's one in Monaghan, Cavan, Leitrim, Donegal and Sligo, as well then as the council areas in the north. But yeah, we're all doing the same. We're all at the minute really working with them grassroots groups and trying to get their walk set up in the community and local spaces and training them walk leaders.
There's another great organisation that we really are inspired by. They're associated with Sport Ireland and Mountaineering Ireland, and they're called Get Ireland Walking. So that's, again, another example of a really good, strong, existing walking programme that we've taken our inspiration from. And although we've stretched out across the border, it's not to really compete with Get Ireland Walking, but there are certain distinctions. There are certain ways of working, operational details, if you like, that we're bringing to the table that just vary from the model that, for example, even Walking Scotland or indeed Get Ireland Walking deploy. With regards to this programme, we're taking a very supportive approach to the development of walks. That's why, for example, as part of our programme, we've employed 16 Walking for All officers, working with what is probably quite a small geographic area compared to, your experience in Canada or the US or even Scotland. Geographically, we've got quite a small programme area here. And yet we've got 16 Walking for All officers supporting mainly volunteer walk leaders to establish walks, build those walks out and get the participants involved. Yeah, so we're very much a cross-border programme. And the other thing to mention is that our funding comes from the special EU programmes body. So that's PEACEPLUS funding, as we call it. So it's essentially legacy funding, or funding that comes from the legacy of the Troubles here in Northern Ireland. And so there's a cross-community connection element to what we're doing. So not only are we seeking to establish walking groups all across the programme area, so that's Northern Ireland and those 6 border counties, and the goal is to establish 600 new walking groups across that programme area within 3 years. But it's also to bring communities together. So the traditional divides here in Northern Ireland being that dividing line coming down typically between the Protestant and Catholic communities. Part of our remit and within the kind of strategic approach that we're taking is to bring walking groups from those communities and indeed from other communities. So in Ireland now we've got a lot of new communities, especially where Grania works down in Louth and in the border areas, We've got a lot of new communities formed there. So again, we've got a significant amount of funding, not only to establish walking groups and get people engaged in walking, but also to bring distinct communities together in what we call a twinning. So we'll be organising joined up walking activities, maybe activities outside of walking, maybe doing some fun days, some barbecues over the summer, but bringing those distinct communities together. And that kind of really is the underpinning principle of Walking for All. It's about using walking to facilitate connection between individuals within communities and then between communities themselves. That really is the underpinning principle of the programme.
Could you tell me a bit about the latest project that comes under the PEACEPLUS umbrella?
There's lots of projects that are currently being funded here all over the island of Ireland, but particularly in Northern Ireland and the border areas, again, about, trying to connect up, if you like, communities who were traditionally divided, living distinct from each other. And the SEUPB and PEACEPLUS are funding, I think, certainly hundreds of projects as part of this latest round of PEACEPLUS funding. They sort of range from big infrastructure, big capital projects. For example, I know that one of the projects that's funded is to improve the railway line between Dublin and Belfast, very practical, economic-led projects, all the way down to grassroots community groups. So PEACEPLUS funding, they have a particular subset of the funding approach, which is called the Change Makers Fund, which are just small grants, relatively small in the grand scheme of things, but grants up to €100,000, which is still quite significant, but which, grassroots community groups who are involved are bringing, again, people together, connecting communities, dealing with the legacy of the Troubles here in Ireland and in Northern Ireland particularly to facilitate their work.
All right, so maybe we could move on to Outscape and you could give me some background on Outscape.
So Outscape is a not-for-profit outdoor recreation, and they are basically trying to promote the outdoors and try and make it as accessible as possible for everyone, which I think is a great organisation for Walking for All to come under. It's really about getting people who the outdoors may not be as accessible to and helping them get out there and see places maybe they haven't seen before. Outscape also do, as Gareth has mentioned earlier, a lot of place shaping, so developing trails. In terms of Walking for All, it's great to have people on the ground that are able to look out in communities and see areas that potentially a trail could go into, and then to be able to work with Outscape and see about getting trails in places. But yeah, I think Outscape it's a fantastic organisation to be working with and to be delivering Walking for All. I think the values really align with both. Gareth might have more of an insight into some other particular projects that are going on.
It's about working strategically, Jim, but then working at that grassroots level again. So that's very much the kind of approach of Outscape. So on a strategic level, we're working with local authorities and with national bodies like, for example, Tourism Ireland, Tourism Northern Ireland, to improve infrastructure, work on a strategic plan for communities to improve access and improve accessibility, improve access to the outdoors. And then the kind of unrealized part of Outscape for many years was a participation pillar. And it was always sort of there being devised and perceived. And again, Outscape were involved in over the last decade in devising the Walking for All programme, and indeed dipped their toe with another programme called Walking in Your Community, which was launched out just before COVID and kind of petered out a little bit during COVID because of obviously the restrictions that took hold. But that gave us a great bed of learning or experience in that participation field, which has given us the confidence now to launch what is, what we hope to be the flagship walking participation programme on the island of Ireland over the coming weeks and months, the 3 years that we've certainly achieved funding for up until now. So participation is very much kind of missing piece of the puzzle for Outscape. And just in launching Walking for All, we've essentially doubled the staff, the headcount at Outscape as well. So it's quite a big, meaty project. And we've gone from in the teens number of staff over the last 6 months to having 25 staff now, all working in their various distinct fields, whether that's trail development, what we call place shaping, working strategically on outdoor recreation strategies with local authorities, or indeed now in getting people outdoors, getting people to participate in walking activities and use those trails. And I suppose the big vision for Outscape would be to use the intelligence, as Grania has said, that we gain from running the participation pillar, running the Walking for All program, to identify those areas where people are underserved in terms of accessibility, in terms of being able to access good, decent walking trails, biking trails, blueways, waterways for outdoor recreation. So we're hoping to really join the dots now with Walking for All, informing also the work that we're doing in other aspects of the organisation, in other sides of the organisation.
It's probably the same the world over, but are there issues with the level of activity for people on both sides of the border?
Yeah, I think, there's always going to be barriers that we're trying to overcome, whether that's, where people live. We're primarily working with people living in rural areas. So you're looking at accessibility there. Is there even footpaths in their village? Is there lighting? Are the roads safe to even walk on? So I think that's where Walking for All can kind of come in, where it gives people, first of all, an element of walking with a group, helps people feel safe, but also gives them a reason to get out. If they know my group is going at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, then I know I need to be there. If you're going by yourself, it's easy to stay in bed maybe and roll over. But I think the element of a walking group helps people get out there. If you find out there's a walking group in your area, it might be on a walking route that you didn't even know existed. So it gives people that element of finding new routes in their areas and new places to walk. And there, can also then promote the local area. But yeah, I think there's definitely going to be barriers, but it's just about overcoming them. And, as well, goes with our name, Walking for All. We want walking to be accessible for everyone. We're walking, we're wheeling. So as much as possible, we want our routes to be accessible for all abilities to help break down them barriers that may exist.
The principle is accessibility. It's about giving everyone the opportunity to engage in walking. So, there's some key characteristics of a Walking for All walk that would define us. And one of those, as Grania has mentioned, is that we go from the same place at the same time every week. Groups will, over time, no doubt, want to vary the routes that they're taking, and maybe as people's ability progresses, if they get more confident, they'll want to maybe undertake more challenging walks, and we'll definitely allow an organic kind of development of walking groups over time. But certainly the core provision that we're looking to establish is same time, same place every week. So someone knows that if they go out into their community on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock, that walk is leaving from, let's say, the library or the school gates or wherever it may be, which means there's a real predictability about it. It means that people can rely on that provision. The other thing is that all of our walks are going to take place on lowland, easy terrain. So we're not a rambling club. There's existing provision for that. The Ulster Federation of Rambling Clubs here in Northern Ireland, for example, can provision those kind of more challenging walks up the beautiful Mourne Mountains that we have here, or the Sperrin Mountains, or indeed the more challenging coastal routes that we have here. We're very much about allowing people who have maybe who are recovering from illness, who have mobility issues of some sort, maybe people who are, retired and aren't able at the minute to find that 150 minutes worth of physical exercise every week that's recommended to them, find that entry point to be able to, start to engage with physical activity and improve their fitness level, their, and all those other physical and mental benefits that come from regular walking. So lowland, easy terrain, and then, just even the kind of length of the walks varies greatly. A Walking for All walk could be just 10 minutes long. You might have some individuals who are coming out after a serious illness, after, being involved in an accident or having undertaken some, medical intervention, and they just need something short but accessible that they can engage with. And that really does underpin the program. So although we will allow development, we'll allow progression, we'll allow groups to kind of form out and become their own thing. Certainly our goal is to at least protect that entry level core, really accessible provision that Walking for All is seeking to establish right now in those 600 groups across Northern Ireland and the Republic.
How are you getting that message out to communities?
I think on the ground, each officer established in each community. So, for example, I'm in Louth. We're really working at a grassroots level, so trying to get out to community groups. The minute I have a group working in one of the men's shed out in Tullyallen, so they've started their walking group, and also within GEA clubs as well have been fantastic to get involved. So it's really working at that low level, getting into community groups, promoting the programme and trying to get them involved. I'm also working within the local sports partnership, and they've been fantastic at helping me get contacts with groups they've previously worked at. For each officer, I think it's definitely about getting in on the ground, getting into them community groups and kind of getting the program out there and making your presence known, I guess. And then there's also working, I guess, at a higher stakeholder level as well, and letting the message trickle down, whether that be, again, working with the county GAA level, the council level, and then in turn letting that message trickle down to them grassroots groups. But for me, I think definitely it's been physically getting into community groups and chatting about the program has been a great way to increase participation in it.
Another key part of this strategy is the partnership model that we're deploying. So we're working with 15 partners across the programme and then some associate partners as well. Grania is a Walking for All officer, and although she's employed by Outscape, she works on a day-to-day basis in the local sports partnership, which is the council run or council funded partnership down in County Louth where Grania works and lives. So we've got this vast network of partners in Northern Ireland. In many instances, it's the local authorities. So it's the councils themselves who are employing the Walking for All officer. So the Walking for All officer is essentially performance managed by the program management team, all of whom are employed by Outscape, but they're seated and employed and, on a day-to-day basis, line managed by the local authority, the local council. So that gives them that kind of rooted approach. So they're rooted within the community in which they live and work. They've also got the power, if you like, and the authority and credibility of the local council. And then all of course, the functions that come along with that. So the council have an age-friendly team that is already working in communities with perhaps people, more senior kind of members of the community. They've got community development teams who are working with perhaps some of the more marginalised communities within the council area. They've got teams of people that are already connected into, if you like, the people that we're seeking to connect with, and we're seeking to or looking to leverage those relationships, use the credibility and the voice of the local authorities and the local sports partnerships to get that word out there. On top of that, we've also got a centralized communications function. So we're working, we've got our own team of professionals that are working to promote the program on a national level, do some of that traditional kind of above the line marketing activity as well, to make sure that Walking for All becomes essentially a well-known and recognized brand here in Northern Ireland and, in those border counties that we're operating.
I know that you mentioned the 600 groups, and I saw that in the information that you're looking to 600 groups in 3 years. How are you going to achieve that? Because that seems quite a lot.
I'll let Grania tell you because she's on the ground delivering it.
Yeah, so each area and each officer will have their targets for their area, and I guess that's based on population and geographical size. For example, my targets for Louth for the 3 years in terms of walking groups. For groups, I'll have 45 walking groups, hopefully by the end of the 3 years, 182 walk leaders. So, looking at them targets in the beginning, it was whoa. But, as the program's rolling, you can really see an interest in people and getting involved. So, hopefully to meet the targets would be great, but I'm sure we can smash through them as well and really work on getting people out there and getting people walking. But I think the good weather coming along now is definitely increasing the interest in people, and people are saying, absolutely, there's the sun again, let's get outside and let's get walking, and hopefully that will mean great things now for Walking for All. But they're big targets, but I think the team that's working on it's a fantastic team, and everyone's very passionate about the program and really want to help people get out there, help people get out to the outdoors, improve their health, improve their well-being, help people socialize in their community. So it's a fantastic team working towards this, and I've no doubt there's great things to come.
number one, we have to be quite honest in terms of what we're delivering. And one of the unique things about what we're doing versus existing programs is that we have, from the very beginning, I think, understood the need to be able to report back on what it is we're achieving. So, we've got funding for the next 3 years, which is focused in rural communities here in Ireland. And yes, those 600 groups are all going to come out of those rural communities. But ideally, we'd really love Walking for All to bed in and to look beyond those 3 years and expanding the programme. Some of the areas of greatest need actually exist in terms of finding people who are least active in society. They exist within those urban areas that at the moment we're not working in. So we're also very aware that although we've got the 600 groups to form right now, that really our ambition doesn't stop there. We want to reach out and ensure that we have a kind of a national coverage at some point. In order to do that, we're going to need additional funding or funding beyond the 3 years that we're currently funded. And that means that we need to be able to demonstrate the impact of our work. So all of our participants, all of our walk leaders are registering through a digital system. They're all giving us essentially a baseline survey at the beginning, which tells us a little bit about their physical activity levels as they currently are. And over the course of the programme, we'll seek to go back out to them and just re-survey them at stages, obviously based on their willingness to respond to those, but to sort of give us the kind of insights and knowledge and feedback that we need to make sure that we're having the impact that we seek to have, both in terms of physical activity, but also then in relation to kind of mental health, and then those concepts and ideas of connectedness, whether that be connectedness to each other, to other communities, and then to the natural environment. So again, one of the things that we're keen to do is not just go out and form those groups. In many ways, we believe, Jim, that we're pushing on an open door with this program. We believe that we've got an offer here, something that really appeals to people. It is a common sense program, that I think most people who we speak to see value in. So it's, again, just helping people to overcome any barriers that they have to participation on an individual level. But then beyond that, being able to demonstrate to future funders and statutory bodies the impact of the work that we're having beyond those kind of top line numbers and targets, more on a kind of individual level with case studies and stories of individuals who've benefited from the programme.
And what about ensuring the trails themselves?
Here in Ireland, there's more barriers and restrictions in those rural areas to cutting across the field. And, one of the things that we need to do at Walking for All is ensure that all of our walking routes are authorised, if you like, so that they have the permission of a local landowner. So again, we have a lot of good centralised infrastructure. We've got a lot of forest parks, for example, in Northern Ireland and the border counties that we're operating, but they could be maybe 20 or 30 miles from the village where our walking group is. And so it's about being able to define safe and accessible routes within those rural communities. And I think certainly the trail network, the network of walking routes here in Northern Ireland, and indeed in some of those border counties as well, require a significant amount of investment and development over the coming years. If we're really going to succeed in getting our communities, and especially those rural communities, out walking.
What does the success of the program look like? Is it just simply numbers, or is it improved health? Is it building of relationships?
Yeah, I think, look, numbers are one thing, but I think the overall success of the program is to see people getting out and getting active. It's not just about people's physical health. We want to be able to see that people have improved their mental health, that people are socializing, that there's connections being made in communities. That's the overall goal of the program. Numbers are great, but I think them success stories are fantastic, which we're already seeing. A fantastic group I'm working with, as I said, the Men's Shed, they've experienced success. They sent on 2 men well into their 80s, completed their first lap of the pitch, and it's success stories like that mean that our program is working. Much more before the numbers, as important as they are, I think it's them little stories and them little snippets that you're getting from our walk leaders and participants that really kind of give you that boost and give you that kind of reward element to the work that you're doing.
And Jim, we've got a monitoring and evaluation team, and again, that centralized source of data. So when people are joining up, they're giving us those baselines in terms of, how they're feeling and how active they are currently. For us, success Yes, we of course need to meet the commitments we've made to our funder. That's vitally important, and we're not going to take our eye off that because, our ability to be able to prove that we can go and deliver those kind of really ambitious targets. So let me just run through them. We've got 600 walking groups to be established in the next 3 years, but that involves 2,500 walk leaders being trained up to facilitate those groups and to run those groups. And beyond that, we've set a target of 14,000 new participants. So individuals who we would define as the least active within our society coming out and walking with us on a regular basis. So again, it's about sustained participation. We don't want to see walkers coming out and doing one walk and deciding it's not for them. So, it's really key that, when we get someone who's coming out for the first time, maybe coming off the sofa, maybe not taking exercise on a regular basis, maybe someone suffering from mental health issues, from isolation or loneliness, which is a huge post-COVID within our society, a huge issue that I think all of our societies are facing. It's about us, number one, knowing that participant when they begin, not being too intrusive, but just trying to capture a little bit about how they're feeling about their current situation when they join the program. Then over the course of the lifetime of the program, through sustained participation with walking and with walking groups, just checking in with them at regular points and understanding, have they experienced an improvement in their mental health? Are they feeling less lonely, less isolated, more connected to their community, more connected to the natural environment? And, our monitoring and evaluation team, who are incredibly competent and are sitting right behind us here every step of the way, primed and ready to report back and to give us the insights that really mean something, which is that we've impacted the lives of those people who've engaged with the program over the next 3 years.
And I think sometimes on the financial side of things as well, that there are indirect things that happen, such as less reliance on the healthcare systems.
Absolutely. It isn't a coincidence, or it's not unplanned, that the Public Health Agency, the PHA here in Northern Ireland are behind the program in many ways, has supported its development, are supporting its rolling out. So there are ways that, you can calculate those benefits. And again, our monitoring and evaluation team will hopefully work with experts in public health to really work out that impact. But, again, those are really sitting behind everything. Those are the kind of outcomes that we're seeking to deliver.
Well, that's great. And for those who are interested in participating, either as a walker or as a leader, how do they get in touch?
I guess if anyone's interested, definitely get onto our website,
That would be it.
www.walkingforall.com, and there you can register your interest to be a walk leader. You can also register your interest and sign up to be a participant, and you'll also see all of our walks that are currently taking place. I think there's 14 walks up there at the minute, and I'm sure there's plenty more to come in the next few weeks. So yeah, if anyone is any interested, please see our website for more information, or our Facebook page as well, and you can get some stories there.
I'd say that whether you're a seasoned walker, and you maybe just want to share that love and that passion you have for getting outdoors and walking, that would put you in a great position to lead a Walking for All walk as a walk leader. Or, you're sitting at home and you're thinking about maybe how you can become more active, how you can improve your own health, how you can meet new people within your community, make friends. If you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling isolated, get on our website, get signed up. All of our walks are super friendly, and we just love to see you there. One of the other things about Walking for All is that we really encourage our walk leaders to facilitate everyone having a wee cup of tea at the end. It's a very Irish thing. And everyone at the end can have a wee sit round the bench, or, if the weather's good, throw a rug down onto the grass and sit and have a cup of tea and have a chin wag. So beyond the walk itself, it's about becoming more connected and meeting people and getting better connected to our communities. So if you're feeling like that's something you could benefit from, as a walk leader, as a participant, as Gráinne said, jump on the website, get signed up. We'd love to see you at one of our walks.
I've done some hiking along the northern coast of Ireland and some around Dublin, as well as around Cork, so I would love to go and experience more of that beautiful island. It may be wet, but whatever weather they get in and around Larne, you can guarantee pretty much that's what we're about to get. We have to go and do some filming in a suburb of Belfast over the Easter holidays, and sadly it's supposed to be outside to coincide with that 2 weeks of rain. I was about to say we need to take a canopy over with us for filming, but it would just end up being blown away to Denmark anyway. Walking for All does sound like a great project, getting people out walking and maybe moving on up to bigger and longer walks. You can't beat it, even when it is wet. So that just about does it for this week. If you do have news or suggestions for podcast guests, please do get in touch through jim@walkingpost.com. We are always looking for guests, whether it's about a new trail, a new book or a walking festival, or someone who's done an amazing, unusual or interesting walk somewhere. So I hope you enjoyed this week's walkingpost.com podcast, and I hope you have a great week ahead, hopefully with a walk somewhere, regardless of whether it's raining a lot, or even if it's raining more than a lot. Until next time, happy trails! Walking Post from walkingpost.com is an Air Coastal Media Limited production.